I wasn't supposed to be working that late. The shop had already gone quiet, the kind of quiet that hums through fluorescent lights and half-broken fans. I was elbow-deep in an old record player, trying to figure out why the motor wouldn't spin, when I heard the soft tap of heels on the concrete floor. "Are you still open?" Her voice didn't match the sound. It was low, calm, like someone who already knew the answer but wanted to ask anyway. I looked up. She stood by the counter, holding a paper bag close to her chest. Mid-40s, maybe. The kind of woman who looks like she's used to being listened to, but not necessarily understood. Her hair was tied loosely, strands falling against her cheek in a way that looked accidental, but probably wasn't. I wiped my hands on a rag. Technically, no, but I guess I am now. She smiled, barely. Good. I hate when things end before they should. I didn't know what that meant then. I do now. She placed the bag down. Inside was an old camera, the kind with a winding lever and chipped metal edges. "It belonged to my father," she said. I dropped it. Stupid, I know. I took it gently, careful not to look at her for too long. There was something about her stillness that made me self-conscious, like she could see what I wasn't saying. "I can take a look. Might need a few days." "That's fine," she said. "I'm not in a rush." But she didn't leave. She lingered, glancing around the shelves stacked with forgotten things. Radios, clocks, old telephones. Her eyes moved like she was searching for something that wasn't there anymore. "You fix all of these?" she asked. "Try to. Some of them don't want to be fixed." That made her laugh quietly, and she leaned against the counter, crossing her arms. Maybe that's what makes them worth keeping. For a second, neither of us said anything. The sound of the ceiling fan clicking filled the air between us, steady, stubborn. She looked at me then, and I swear it felt like she was about to say something important, something fragile. But she just exhaled softly and said, "You're too young to care about broken things." I shrugged. Maybe. Or maybe I just see myself in them. That earned another small smile, not the polite kind. The kind that flickers for half a second and disappears before you can decide what it meant. She pulled her coat tighter, as if suddenly remembering she had somewhere else to be. "Don't stay here too late," she said. "I always do," I replied. Her hand brushed the counter as she turned to leave. A faint, unintentional touch that sent a pulse of something I didn't have a name for through my chest. When the door shut behind her, the shop felt emptier than before. I found myself staring at the old camera, her fingerprints still faintly smudged on the metal. That night, I fixed the motor on the record player. It spun perfectly, but I couldn't stop replaying her voice in my head, calm, measured, a little sad. "You're too young to care about broken things." Maybe she was right, but the way she said it, soft, almost like a warning, made it feel less like advice and more like an invitation. I told myself I wouldn't think about her again. I was wrong, because when I closed up the shop, I caught a glimpse of her reflection in the window, or maybe just the memory of her, and the words slipped out under my breath before I could stop them. "Then let me cherish every second." She came back 3 days later. I wasn't expecting her, though I checked the door more times than I'd admit. The bell above it gave a soft jingle, and there she was again. Same calm presence, same unhurried grace, like time didn't move for her the way it did for everyone else. "You fixed it?" she asked. I nodded, setting the camera gently on the counter. It wasn't too bad. The shutter was just jammed. She ran her fingers along the metal, tracing the scratches. "My father used to say cameras steal time," she murmured. "But I think they just hold it hostage." Her tone carried something fragile. Nostalgia, maybe, or guilt. I couldn't tell. She didn't look at me when she said it. I asked if she wanted to test it. She hesitated, then nodded. I handed it to her, and she lifted it with the careful hands of someone who's lost too many delicate things. The lens caught the light as she adjusted it, her fingers trembling slightly. She took one photo of the wall clock, another of the old radio. When she lowered the camera, she smiled faintly. "It still works. You did a good job." "Thanks." I wanted to say something else, anything, but the word stuck. She slipped the strap around her wrist, as if reluctant to put it away. "I owe you for this." "You don't," I said too quickly. "I mean, you already paid." "That's not what I meant." Her eyes lifted then, tired, rimmed with something heavier than sleep. The kind of look people get when they've been carrying the same memory too long. I leaned back against the workbench, pretending to adjust a screwdriver just to give her space. You look like you could use a break, I said lightly. From what? Whatever it is you don't talk about. She froze. Not visibly, just enough that I noticed the way her fingers tightened on the camera strap. Then she exhaled through her nose and gave a small, practiced smile. You shouldn't say things like that. Why not? Because it sounds like you care. The room felt smaller after that. The ticking clock, the faint hum of the fan, everything seemed to lean in, listening. I didn't answer. I just watched her. She looked at the shelves again, touching an old clock that hadn't worked in years. The light caught on the silver of her bracelet, and I noticed her hands, elegant but tired, veins visible beneath soft skin. When she turned to leave, she brushed past me, not close enough to touch, but close enough to feel the warmth. I'll bring you something next time, she said quietly. Something else that needs fixing. She was halfway to the door when I found my voice. You don't have to keep breaking things just to see me. She stopped. Her hand rested on the doorknob for a moment longer than it should have. Then, without looking back, she said, almost too softly to hear, maybe I don't. The door closed, and the faint scent of her perfume, lavender and rain, lingered in the air. And just like that, the silence felt heavier. Not lonely, just full of something I couldn't name. It started raining an hour before closing. The kind of steady, patient rain that makes everything slow down. The clock hands, the breath, the courage. I was sorting through a box of broken cassette players when I heard her voice again. You really don't lock your door on time, do you? I looked up. She stood there with an umbrella dripping at her feet, hair damp around her face, wearing a navy coat that looked far too thin for the weather. I thought you might be closed, she said, almost apologetically. I was, but you have good timing. Her eyes softened. Or bad habits. I grabbed an old towel from the shelf and handed it to her. She hesitated before taking it, brushing her fingers against mine by accident, or maybe not. The touch lasted a second too long, a breath too slow. I brought that clock, she said, pulling a small travel clock from her bag. It's been losing time. Fitting, isn't it? I smiled faintly. Seems to be a theme with you. She didn't answer. Instead, she watched the rain trickle down the shop window. The light flickered once, and for a moment, we were just standing there, surrounded by ticking, humming, broken things that somehow made the silence louder. Want some tea? I asked, breaking the moment before it broke me. She nodded, and I busied myself in the back, pretending to focus on the kettle. I could hear her pacing softly, the gentle click of her shoes against the floor. When I came back, she was sitting on the workbench, legs crossed, looking at a photograph pinned to the corkboard, a younger me with my father. He taught you all this? She asked. Yeah, I said. He used to say fixing things was a way of apologizing to the world. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. He sounds like someone I would have liked. You would have, I said, too quickly again. Her phone buzzed then. A name flashed on the screen before she turned it face down. Daniel. The silence that followed wasn't comfortable. You should answer, I said quietly. She stared at the screen for a long time before shaking her head. Not tonight. She looked up at me, and something in her expression shifted. The careful distance she always held started to slip. You ever feel like you're living in the wrong chapter of your own life? She asked. Every day. The kettle whistled faintly in the back, but neither of us moved. I sat beside her, not too close, not far enough. She turned slightly, her knee brushing mine. That tiny contact, barely anything, made my pulse stumble. You shouldn't look at me like that, she whispered. Like what? Like you see something I'm trying to hide. Her voice trembled just once, the smallest fracture in her calm. And for a second, I almost said it. I almost told her how the nights felt different since she walked in, how her voice had started to live in the quiet corners of my head. But then she reached for her umbrella, stood up, and said, You're kind, but you don't know me. I want to, I said. She paused at the door. The rain had softened to a drizzle, the air thick with the scent of wet asphalt and tea. Without turning, she whispered, Then don't. The door clicked shut, leaving a single teacup half-finished beside mine, still warm, still waiting. And I sat there, staring at the steam fading between us, wondering if she'd come back before it went cold. She didn't come for 2 weeks. By the time she finally walked in again, I'd already convinced myself she wouldn't. The shop had grown too neat, too quiet, as if cleaning it could erase her from the corners she'd filled. She stood by the door, watching me work on an old typewriter. The clacking of its keys filled the space between us until I stopped mid-sentence and looked up. "You disappeared," I said, trying to sound casual and failing. "I was busy," she replied. Her tone was steady, but her eyes avoided mine. "Busy forgetting this place?" She exhaled softly, as though the question carried more weight than I meant it to. "Busy remembering who I'm supposed to be." The words hung there, fragile and deliberate. I set the typewriter aside. "And who is that?" "Not this woman," she said. "Not someone who spends her evenings in a repair shop with a man half her age, pretending time stopped somewhere safe." There it was, the thing we hadn't said, pulled out into the open like a live wire. I didn't move, didn't speak. The air between us thickened, full of things that couldn't survive in daylight. She stepped closer, arms folded as though she could physically hold herself together. "You think this means something, don't you?" "I don't know what it means," I admitted. "But I know I don't want it to stop." Her eyes finally met mine. Sharp, searching, afraid. "You shouldn't say things like that." "Because they're true? Because they make it real." The rain started again outside, faint against the glass. She looked toward it, as if the sound could rescue her. I wanted to reach out, but something in her stillness stopped me. Not rejection, just restraint. That quiet kind of pain people carry when they've already made the decision to walk away. "I'm not who you think I am," she said. "Then tell me who you are." She shook her head, a faint, bitter smile tugging at her mouth. "You wouldn't understand. Try me." That made her laugh once, short, almost broken. "You remind me of how I used to be. Before I learned that wanting something doesn't mean you get to have it." For a long time, neither of us spoke. The clock on the wall ticked like a heartbeat, slow, deliberate, impossible to ignore. When she finally spoke again, her voice was softer. "Do you ever think we met at the wrong time?" "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe this is the only time we ever could have." She looked at me then. Really looked. And the silence that followed felt like standing at the edge of something neither of us were ready to name. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Instead, she just nodded, once, as if to herself. Then, quietly, almost tenderly, she said, "This won't last." I swallowed, my voice barely holding. "Then let me cherish every second." Her eyes closed, not from peace, but from surrender. When she opened them again, the distance between us wasn't physical anymore. And in that silence, I realized something devastating. Sometimes, the moment you understand someone most is the moment you're about to lose them. The shop phone never rings after hours. That night, it did. I was cleaning out a drawer when her name lit up the screen, Elena. It startled me, not because she called, but because I'd stopped expecting her to. "Hey." I answered, my voice quieter than I meant. There was a pause, the faint sound of rain on her end, and then, "Are you there?" "Yeah." "Everything okay?" Another pause, longer this time. I could almost hear her breathing, steady but fragile. "Can I come by?" "I won't stay long." When she arrived, she didn't bother with an umbrella. Her coat was soaked through, hair clinging to her neck. She looked tired, the kind of tired that has nothing to do with sleep. "I shouldn't be here," she said, standing just inside the door. "You're already here," I replied, handing her a towel. She took it but didn't use it. Her hands trembled slightly as she placed a small envelope on the counter. "I found this today. I didn't mean to, but the paper was worn, edges yellowed. My name wasn't on it, his was." "It's not for me," I said. "I know," she whispered. "It's for Daniel." The name from her phone, the one she hadn't answered. She hesitated before sliding it closer. "He passed away 2 years ago. Heart attack." My throat went dry. "I'm sorry." She nodded, her jaw tightening as if she'd already used up all her tears long ago. "He used to come here, not this shop, but one like it. He collected old things. Said they had more truth than people." I didn't know what to say, so I didn't. She finally sat on the edge of the workbench, the same spot where she'd sat weeks ago, and opened the letter. Her voice shook as she read aloud. If you're reading this, it means I didn't fix it, the clock, or us. I hope someday you find someone who reminds you that broken things still have worth. Her voice cracked on the last line. She folded the paper, pressing it flat with both palms like she was afraid it might disappear. I found this today, she said again, quieter. And I thought of you. Why? Because when you look at things, she said, meeting my eyes for the first time, you don't see what's missing. You see what's still there. The room felt smaller. The rain louder. I wanted to reach for her, but it didn't feel like the right kind of moment to touch. Instead, I asked softly, did you love him? She nodded once. Yes, but not anymore. Not like that. I think I'm just haunted by who I was when I did. The clock above us ticked unevenly, skipping every third second. She smiled at it, tired, genuine. You'll fix that, won't you? I'll try. She took a long breath, stood, and touched the envelope one last time. Don't, she said. Sometimes it's okay to leave things imperfect. When she turned to go, she looked back just once, eyes shining not from tears, but from something quieter. Acceptance, maybe, or surrender. And before she stepped into the rain, she said, you remind me that I'm still here. The door closed softly, leaving the echo of her words where she'd been, warm, fleeting, impossible to hold. She came again on a Sunday. No call this time. Just the soft click of the door, the faint scent of rain still clinging to her coat. The shop was half dark, one bulb flickering, the rest surrendered to shadow. I was sitting on the floor, sorting screws into jars, pretending not to be waiting for her. You're working on a Sunday now? She asked, her voice gentler than it had ever been. Guess I don't have anywhere better to be. She smiled faintly. Neither do I. Something in her tone had changed. The edges were gone, softer, stripped of defense. She crossed the room slowly, her eyes taking in the quiet disorder of my world as though it meant something. You fixed the clock, she said. Mostly. It still skips. I like it that way. She let out a quiet laugh, barely a sound, more like an exhale. Then she sat on the stool across from me, close enough that her knee brushed mine. It wasn't intentional. Or maybe it was. For a while, we said nothing. The hum of the lights filled the space where words might have gone. I've been thinking about that letter, she said at last. So have I. She traced a pattern on the wooden counter with her fingertip, slow, distracted. I think I kept waiting for someone to fix me. Daniel tried. Then I tried. But maybe that's not how people work. I nodded, though I wasn't sure if she wanted an answer. I don't know what this is, she continued. You and me. It feels wrong sometimes. Like I'm breaking a rule I didn't know existed. It feels real, I said quietly. Her eyes met mine, and the silence that followed was different, not hesitant, not painful. Just true. I don't want to need you, she said. You don't, I replied. You just let me be here. That made her laugh softly, and for the first time, it wasn't sad. She reached out, almost without realizing it, and brushed her hand over mine. A small, trembling gesture that didn't ask for anything but honesty. We stayed like that, fingers barely touching, until the world outside the windows turned gold with evening. She leaned her forehead against my shoulder, a simple, exhausted movement, and whispered, I don't want to be someone's mistake again. You're not, I said. You're just human. So am I. She didn't answer, just stayed there, breathing, quiet, fragile. And in that stillness, I understood that love wasn't always a confession. Sometimes it was two people sitting in the dim light, not fixing or saving anything, just choosing to stay a little longer. When she finally lifted her head, her eyes were red but steady. She looked at me the way people do when they stop pretending something isn't happening. I should go, she murmured. Yeah. But neither of us moved. The clock skipped again, just once, a small, stubborn pause between seconds. Her hand tightened around mine. And that was all. No promises, no goodbyes. Just a shared breath that said everything we were too afraid to. The kind of silence that doesn't end. It just settles. It's been 6 months since the last time she walked into the shop. The clock she left behind still hangs on the back wall, skipping, faithful to its flaw. I never fixed that. I guess I didn't want to. Some things deserve to keep their imperfection, It's how they stay real. Sometimes I catch myself expecting her, a faint perfume in the air, the echo of her heels on the concrete, the soft way she'd say my name like it was both a question and an answer. Then I remember, she doesn't come here anymore. Not because something went wrong, but because something ended right. She moved away quietly, left a note tucked beneath the counter. No signature, no date, just a few words in her careful handwriting. You help me remember how to feel. Don't stop fixing things, even the ones that don't belong to you. I read it more times than I should have. At first, it hurt. That gentle, empty ache you get when the silence is too full of what used to be said. But with time, it started to feel like what it probably was, gratitude, not goodbye. She taught me that closeness isn't always about having someone. Sometimes it's about being seen, just once, and knowing it changed you. I've fixed a lot of things since then, radios, clocks, even a jukebox that hadn't played in decades. Every time something comes back to life under my hands, I think of her, of the way she looked at broken things and saw history, not failure. And me? I think I finally stopped mistaking longing for love. What we had wasn't forever, but it was true. And maybe that's enough. One evening, a new customer brought in a cracked camera, almost identical to hers. I smiled when I opened it, found the same stuck lever, the same sound when it finally clicked back into place. I told the man it would work again soon. When he left, I turned off the lights, sat on the workbench, and let the shop fill with the kind of silence she once called honest. If she ever walked back in, I don't think we'd need to say anything. Maybe a look. Maybe a smile that said, "We did okay, didn't we?" Because we did. We really did. Love doesn't always end with someone staying. Sometimes, it ends with someone leaving you a little more awake than they found you. And now, every time that clock skips a second, I don't hear a mistake. I hear a reminder that some seconds are meant to linger. Soft pause. If you've ever had someone like that, someone who changed you quietly, even if they couldn't stay, tell me, what did they leave behind? Maybe a letter. Maybe a silence. Maybe just the sound of a clock that never quite ticks right.